Hi, this is Rick Harsh for Corona Samizdat, and today, hold on, got already fucked up. Just a second. Yeah, hang in there. Today is the day the Brossards come back in force. We have Chandler, not just more of these, our only 25-year-old book. Not just more of these, but also with a new afterword that I can't remember why we couldn't get it in here. We got it from Stephen Moore, who really cared about Brossard and really cares about Brossard and really wanted this afterword in here. And it's called About Wake Up by Chandler Brossard. We have that here. And then we've got his daughter, Iris. We published her before, an afterword in the Double Dealers. And now we've got her book of poetry and short stories, a thin volume, they call these things. So thin you can't fit the insignia on the back. But look at that. I love the way it looks. Look at just words. How, words look so nice. This looks like an album cover in a way. There's a nice photograph. I think you have hippie Iris and her hippette kids. Not sure, actually. I haven't read it. Zach's been keeping it to himself, but I'm going to read a couple of them. The first thing I want to say is that, I like to play music to these, but the song that I would play after reading some of these would be Joan Baez, Diamonds and Rust, which I think is a work of unparalleled breakup genius, because she really kind of got screwed by Bobby in more ways than once, and writes the most humane, honest fuck off song, and she can't even bring herself to say fuck off. It's just an elegant and twisting piece that just gives me shivers. Now, there was a poem in here that made me think of that. She's writing about her father. She writes, I'm going to read two poems about Chandler Brossard, her father. This one is called Last Letter to My Father. I was your perfect companion, forged in the conflagration of your craziness. I mean, that Brossard himself may have given her that line. We were inseparable. I never read a book or dated a man you didn't like. Every man I've been with has paid for your cruelty. At 26, after you dashed me on the rocks, they called me dissociative, as I tried to dissect each of my molecules from yours. That one resonates. We had some of our best conversations when you were in the hospice. You told me family stories I had never heard, how your mother gave her inherited land to her autistic sister so their embezzling brothers wouldn't leave her destitute. When you died, I felt despondent, but at peace. Then I discovered you'd cut me out of your will. I kept your library, all your books, your own volumes, the manuscripts you hadn't sold, your photographs and letters, but I gave your Adler typewriter to the Salvation Army. Yeah. Okay, and then I'm not going to go through all the poems about her father, but then again, in the book of poetry, how much do you read? Well, I'm going to read on page 34. I think did I skip it already? Oh no, this is another one, but I like this. Screw your letter to the world. Our replies came back, returned to sender. You broke me when you claimed you'd engineered your self-destruction for my benefit. And absolve me of my failure to save you from yourself. Like Babel's Cossack, who didn't like to shoot a man because it was too impersonal, and preferred to spend an hour or more kicking, bludgeoning, bashing, because when you stomp a man to death, you really get into his soul. It's you, the choke on my throat, the slight fibrillation with each systole, whispering, I love you, I love you, I did this for you. And I love that one. Now, I think on page 34, there's sorry I didn't publish a book before you died, or ever to date. Sorry I didn't get a spot at Harvard, professorship somewhere. Waspy, non-Sicilian. Didn't describe a syndrome. Have thousands of sick people carrying my name as their illness, but you didn't care about that. I know now. In the hospice, I asked, are you disappointed? I never published a book. You said, almost gone on morphine. I never thought about it, and I trusted you, and you told me stories till the end about your Mormon family and your mother giving her Utah farm to her disabled sister. And I wanted you to never leave, to keep telling me stories, because there were so many more. And you should have stayed. But I know you love me, right? Simple. And you know, as it is when you don't trip over the heads of the dead, they bring out some of the most profound thoughts, feelings. I will not go further into that. The book is Instinctive Heresies by Iris Brossard, with an introduction by Zachary Tanner. He's our Brossard person. And I'll read from that because it's got my name in it. And, you know, I never do this, not even privately. So why not do it publicly? Don't do privately what you'd rather do publicly. I wasn't always so, Zach writes, I wasn't always so healthy in my relationships. I must admit that with Rick Harsh, I was guilty of using the internet to become his friend in the hopes of publishing my first novel, never thinking that we would become inseparable buddies, confidants, and collaborative partners in the process, nor that it would be the way I came to discover a favorite author, Chandler Brossard. Now, you know, what I love about this is, you know, the admitting the, you know, the sneaky beginning, which I would never do without. And I hope, you know, that's one of the reasons we're friends, is he wouldn't do without it either. So what more do we have to offer than one of the best books in the United States? You know, all these books that people discover and say, you know, secret book, hidden book, whatever the terms are, forgotten authors, and so on. Well, the best has already been published. You're not going to find a better one. Keep digging. Keep digging. It's just going to be another book that wasn't that great, but was good enough to be remembered, which is something that we all have to wonder about. Wailing, madness, shame, and death. Will that be remembered? That one certainly should be. A bended circuity certainly will be. Cactus Boots will be reminding. It's already alive. You know, Phil and Jeff are working on a second volume, I suppose, a companion volume or whatever you want to call it. But, you know, if they vanished from the earth, Cactus would be doing its own gymnastics all across our screens. These screens, not the glasses, but those screens. It's behind your eyes. If you can't find it, use a toothpick, sharpen it. Okay, About Wake Up by Chandler Brossard. One of the most amazing writers, especially given his career, which he refers to in here, so I won't explain much about it. I guess I can say, though somewhat apprehensively, that this is my most ambitious work. My apprehension is that by saying this, I am, by implication, rating the other books as less important. They are not. They are. Each one is just as important as the others. Each one had its own structural necessities and goals. Wake Up the same. The only difference besides length is that in Wake Up, I explored and projected all I know about fiction, from the most simplistic type of short story to the freest, most subtle and revealing language revelations that were half-consciously written, or written with the minimum of auditing by my societally structured conscious mind, which is exactly why it's more important than all the others, because he succeeded. On a fundamental level, Wake Up is my answer to all of the forms and aesthetics and presumptions of Western fiction. It is my counter-mythology. It is the statements, howls, screams, confessions, accusations of the things that curry leap when the stone is lifted to the lifter of the stone and to the stone itself. These dark, forever denied realities that live or die at the presumption of the exposed side of the stone and its political relationship to the world. What possible interest would the stone have without its under-secrets? Who cares about bras unless they hide a tit? To wander a bit, there was a time in the beginning of my life as a writer, in quotes, though I really do not think of myself as one of those, and I will go into this later, when all I wanted to do was write a good, tight story about somebody doing something. In that phase of my awareness, more precisely, my novitiate in an intense and small sect. I thought that such things as good writing and good form were authentic thought, or authentic and self-evident truths. Sorry, I'm a bad reader, yes. I gradually discovered that this was nonsense, and that by submitting myself to such nonsense, I was undergoing self-deception and self-maiming. These forms and rules, I learned, have their origin not in the soul or in organic ontology, but rather in socio-political areas, classes, whose dynamics and epistemologies are reductive, anti-feeling, anti-chaos, and fundamentally terrified. Roast beef and string beans, let us say, as opposed to squid fingers, hog maws, greens, and insidiously lovely black-eyed peas. What I mean is form can be understood as a means of keeping out Caliban, who, as we all know, would queer the whole act. Also, there is a certain kind of language and smile that make it absolutely impossible for Prospero to be revealed in a drag queen and the real mother, to be revealed as a drag queen and the real mother of the dark person in question, to say nothing of the sly and lewd possibility that Miranda was a schizophrenic somnambulist who laid for everything on the island. I discovered my own vision, is what I am trying to say, and that my vision had its own needs, its own language and image system, which had nothing at all to do with the abstracting expertise I had picked up while snuffling under the influence of those in power. I saw my vision only after shaking off the staining influence of the New Yorker, where I worked for 2 years as a young, frightened boy, 20 to 22 years of non-age. I was very much intimidated and impressed by those people, and I must admit in all self-condemning honesty that I would have performed with an animal act in Macy's window for their approval. What a corrupt and vicious place that is, I was almost ruined by the, quote, teaching, end quote, of the fiction editor, William Maxwell. yeah, yeah, piss up a Conroy and call me Charlie, who was the first person to explain to me what my symbols, etc., meant. The self-consciousness he induced in me almost ruined the faith my unconscious system had in itself. Ugh. I shudder when I realize how very close I came to being their youngest front-of-the-book fiction writer. I experienced my love of revelatory inventive language while writing The Bold Saboteurs. Not only language, but the other world which we are told is bad or dangerous. Hidden within this new language are beauties and countries more fabulous than those being discovered and dug up in the Middle East. The funny thing is that I was able to slip into these forbidden countries only by giving up my craftsman control, so to speak. I got there through a kind of Zen no-mind. If I could hold my breath and tongue long enough and sink down and down until I thought I was going to vanish, then these other things made themselves known to me. We got to know one another. They had been waiting for me. When this first meeting took place back in 1950, I saw myself for the first time, and I knew then that I did indeed exist. Can you imagine that exalted moment when the drawings in the caves became animated, and there you are with those fabulous prehistoric realities? So, in Wake Up, I swam and leaped in the realization that language thinks. It isn't a descriptive, humble little Batman always ready to describe something like a tree. It is the reality itself, in the same way that music makes no reference to anything outside itself. I don't mean autistically or as a sort of sophisticated technology without human references. There are all kinds of ways of revealing the human being in action. And most of them are, at dark heart, ways of inactivating the human being. Take the difference between the statements that follow. Alice walked across the room and got herself a cigarette from the silver box. She lit one and inhaled deeply. And this. Have you seen the bumptiousness of the evening otter? The latter, if one reads, sinks into it, questions all structures of meaning, all positions of spectator-participant. It liberates those tiny muscles that held back the ecstatic moan and the wild sky-tasting scream. You are the sky. And at the same time, you are no longer the zookeeper with his otter. You are playing with the otter in its inviolable freedom. Everybody is everybody else, and time and its arbitrary sequences is something laid upon us by the town fathers, so to hell with it. During any given hour, we are weaving in and out of other people and places and times. This is so axiomatic as to seem dumb. For the past 5 minutes, for instance, I have been typing this page and talking to my wife and playing with her and thinking of screwing her and walking down a particular street in Majorca with her 20 years ago and feeling that I am her and myself at the same time, and I have been having a loud conversation with Vion and experiencing the rage of a Vietnamese peasant who has just been napalmed. So in this sense, Wake Up is a true documentary, not at all a fiction. Also, I've never really been sure about the relationship between the characters in a book and the author. I discovered that the characters have as much to say about the author as vice versa, and that finally the author is just as much an invention as the characters. And this is the way Wake Up ends. This ending is not a trick. It is sincere and without any question more true than anything I know. I really do not exist outside my fiction. I am all these people, and they are me, and at any moment, one of them may call the shots as he sees it. When I am not writing, or in other words, when I am not in a book, I feel weird and nervous and not quite sure I will survive. like a fish out of water or a crouton out of soup, I am pretty sure then I have gifts and that they work. The title really says it. I feel that people are really asleep when they are supposedly awake, and that what follows in my book and the shared reality that most people always regard as a thing that happens only in dreams. Anybody who thinks dreams are only dreams is crazy. And anybody who thinks the seedy, contemptible things that happen in waking hours is real or is the substance of life, well, these people are dangerous. Finally, had I not written Wake Up, I am pretty sure I would have fallen into a subhuman state and perhaps even been destroyed by despair. I took 5 years to write it because I was sick and nuts and fragmented, and even in the hospital, for massive interior bleeding, not for shock. I am saying that it was pursued with all my strength during some of the very worst years of my life, even when I was in awful pain. And thinking that a particular day was my last, I simply had to hold myself together long enough to work a little on it. If I didn't, it would stop breathing, and so would I. About being a, quote, writer, end quote, I really think of myself as involved in a religious experience of which the writing is an expression, like the fellows who, quote, wrote, end quote, the Bible. Edna Ferber is a writer, as is James Jones and Mailer. Celine is a religious nut like me, and so is Herman Brock. London, 3rd January, terrible place and time, 1971. Good year for wine, better year for fiction. So that's the new stuff today. We got Instinctive Heresies by Iris Brossard, and we have the big, fat, expensive Wake Up. We're almost there. Sorry, $25. I mean, somebody's got to charge $25 for something, or this, I mean, but this is only 10, and it's so little, it won't cost you more to order 3. Yeah. I'm really happy today. This is an important day for the press. Somehow, I didn't start this with the intentions of achieving anything like success beyond getting David Vardaman published. I knew I was going to get myself published because I had to save my book from a dishonest person in the United States, and so I had to do it. What was going to happen from there, I didn't know, but the meaning of the press established itself with the publication of David Vardaman's story. I've said that before in many ways, and it's built with all the Canadians, with Jeff Bursey first, and his terrific unidentified man at left of photo. So key a book in our pantheon. I don't know. I hesitate to talk about my pants when people are in front of me. But now, with the terrific luck and generosity and aid of Stephen Moore and the permission of the key Brossards, and they know who they are, I don't, but perhaps we can just not go to court on that. And the Brossard collection, I hope we add to it this year, has become a defining and celebratory feature of our press. And a new Brossard, even if it's the old Brossard, is cause for celebration. And an absolutely brand new Brossard and another in the line is just, it's a promise. And it's also something very beautiful innately. Do I get this?